What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Show back with another video, and today I'm comparing these two really great JRPGs. We got SMT5 and we got Xenoblade 3. I don't really like to compare games like that. I mean, in a sense I do. I did compare SMT5 to Persona a lot. But even though this is just like my ramblings, I'm just gonna talk about which of the two games I kind of like better in certain aspects. I chose these two games instead of like putting Xenoblade against like something like Persona 5, just simply because these are both Switch. These are both exclusive to Switch. Even though it's rumored that SMT5 could be releasing on like PS4, PS5 systems soon, and obviously that's been kind of debunked, so we don't really know where that's up in the air at right now. But with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and get into it now. I'm gonna kind of structure this down. Like I said, this is just my rambling thoughts after playing both games for like many hours. This is just my thoughts about the game in general. So if I end up doing more of these, I'll do it like a really more structured format, and I'll have it be like one of my main, you know what I'm saying, like type of videos, depending on how this video does. But with that being said, let's go and get into the video. Now, first of all, I want to talk about Xenoblade and SMT5 as a whole. They are both great games. They're both fantastic games. I spent a lot of hours into them. I want to talk about like the relevance to like the franchise and what they can do for the franchise that they are under and how revolutionary it was. I'm talking about gameplay. I'm talking about graphics. I'm talking about music. I'm pretty much gonna talk about your main review staples, and then, you know, obviously you can feel free to kind of disagree with me if you want. But with that being said, man, let's jump right into the video. We got enough wasting time right here. Let's jump right into the video. Now, first of all, I want to start with probably one of the biggest ones, just simply because in a sense it's real important, and it's a clear winner to me in this department. We're talking about story. We're gonna talk about story right now. As far as story goes, I feel like, yes, obviously SMT5 is a specific type of story. Now, normally in SMT games, it's all about apocalypse and, you know, world ending and stuff, and it's more heavily focused towards the gameplay, whereas in Persona series it's more like story based, and it has good gameplay, but it's more like of a deeper story with different meanings and hidden meanings. While in Xenoblade,
fighting in order to live and living to fight, that's the way of our world. Ionios.
It's basically a really grand tale of, you know, people banding together and joining forces to kind of make a change in the world. So obviously I'm gonna go with Xenoblade here, just simply because Xenoblade is such an epic tale of two. I don't really want to spoil it because obviously it's a good chance you guys haven't played through the whole game yet, and it's a good chance you might pick up one of these JRPGs, so I'm not gonna spoil like the whole entire story. But basically, while SMT does go into more of philosophical meanings and stuff, and you deal with a lot of like hidden meanings behind different interpretations of how you feel about the story. You know, it's like how you take the story. It is an actual story in there, and it is layered behind some kind of deep meanings and thought, but at the same time it's not as interesting as the Xenoblade story. The Xenoblade story is basically about two different clans who've been fighting since they can remember, fighting to live, fighting to basically gather resources and be able to live longer, just a little bit longer. They had to fight and kill each other for that. And, you know, the main story of the game is basically two teams from both sides kind of joining forces, trying to make a change, trying to basically change the whole structure of the world so that they don't have to do that anymore. And in a sense, as you play through the game, that story gets deeper and deeper. You know what I'm saying? There are some corny things with certain characters returning I really didn't like. But other than that, I really enjoyed the process of this game and the way they told the story to me. You know, it made me feel like I was a part of the story. It made me feel like I was watching an anime, in a sense that I really was so enthralled in what was going to happen next. Alright, so with that being down, with story being down, and my clear winner being Xenoblade 3, let's move on to music. Now, music is kind of tricky. To be honest, I do love both music choices, but this is another thing I feel like is clearly on No, I'm not gonna lie. It was definitely not easy to choose which game to give this to. But I'm gonna have to, and I know I'm gonna get ate up in the comments for this. And I understand. I definitely do. I'm actually gonna give it to
Yes.
Shin Megami, because simply yeah, I'm kind of trying to explain myself like this. Now, Shiva theme in Shin Megami is like one of my favorite themes in pretty much any video game. Honestly, I really love the soundtrack for both games. I can not understate or overstate whatever it is. I cannot express enough how much I love both soundtracks. But maybe considering that I just heard Xenoblade 3's whole soundtrack like more recently, and it feels like maybe like some of the battle themes and stuff has gotten kind of old to me after playing so many hours, and Shin Megami 5 is a little bit older. But to be honest, I really do love Shin Megami 5's whole soundtrack. Like, they got a lot of nice chill vibe songs. They got a lot of songs that really get aggressive. The Shiva theme is really just kind of out of this world in my opinion, just kind of a whole subversion of what I thought it would be. While Xenoblade has some good music, to be honest, I mean, I love Xenoblade's music, don't get me wrong. I personally think that Xenoblade's 2 soundtrack was probably better, and the reason for that is just because, I don't know, it just sounded better, to be honest. So I'm not saying that Xenoblade 3 is necessarily bad music. I just think just by a little bit, I think SMT edges it out. That's just my opinion. So next we'll move on to gameplay, which is probably, honestly, actually we'll move on to something else first. We'll move on to like graphics and visuals. I think this is kind of easiest to say. While Xenoblade 3 is the best looking Xenoblade 3 game, I'm gonna have to give it to SMT. Obviously, now this is a little bit of bias, just simply because I really like the look of SMT5 and Xenoblade 3. When I played it mostly on console, like on the TV, and I switched to handheld. And obviously, if you play the Xenoblade game, you pretty much know how it looks. This one looks way leagues better than the other games for sure, but I don't think it's really touching SMT on handheld and in console, so I don't think that's something that needs to be debated. Maybe it needs to be debated, maybe if people feel like it's I guess difficult choice, but for me this is a pretty easy choice. So I kind of wanted to speed past it because graphics is something that's not very important to a game, but it can actually make or break a game's experience. Even though graphics did not break my experience over playing Xenoblade 3, for some people it can be a very defining factor. Alright, so with that being said, let's move on. We're going to move on from that. So next up, we're going to go to world. Now, world is like a category. I'm basically saying like scenery, world. Now, even though SMT has better graphics, in my opinion, their worlds are kind of bland. Now, some of their actual like worlds and stuff, like some of the city worlds and stuff, they're really cool, like things to look at. But like moving around the world, all that stuff kind of counts. And I think this is another easy choice for me. I'm gonna go with Xenoblade for sure. I think the Xenoblade, like the world, the way that everything looks, the map, basically like seeing the scenery. I really love the scenery in Xenoblade 3. I'm not gonna lie. I do feel like it's a little bit better in my opinion. That's just my opinion, but I really do enjoy it. Like, I feel like I'm really adventuring when I'm out and playing the game. Like I said, graphics wouldn't really have any bearing on this because even though you can't see it that clearly, it still looks good. So that's another knockout the park. So currently we have story goes to Xenoblade 3. Music goes to SMT5. Graphics goes to SMT5. And we have world or scenery going to Xenoblade 3. So that evens it up at 2-2. So I think the last defining factor to decide what game's gonna win in this versus to me is probably gameplay, because that's a very important part and will end up being the tiebreaker of this video. So with gameplay, I think we need to have a kind of layered discussion. Gameplay for SMT5 is really great in my opinion. It is basically the more polished version of a Pokemon gameplay. Pokemon is like one of the most biggest, I think it is the biggest game franchise in the entire world, and for good reason. At least some of the older games used to be very interesting, used to be very fun to play. That whole monster capture with different weaknesses and typing is a very interesting concept. And it goes the same for Shin Megami 5. You know, the ability to kind of talk demons into joining your party, or, you know, giving you things and stuff, is a really nice addition. Obviously that was in Persona 5, but we're talking about SMT5 right now. So honestly, I really think the gameplay is super solid. I love that you can kind of mix and match stats to make like maybe an ultimate demon monster or whatever. It's honestly, it's just so polished, so fun to play. I can honestly sit there and just do battles. Like when I was grinding in that game, I did not mind grinding at all. I played it, and you know, I really liked leveling up my stats simply because it was just so fun. I would get into a match and make like a spirit or a monster that wouldn't even be able to touch me. You know, that I could be so strong that I could just kind of wipe stuff away. The gameplay also was good because it also had a great level of difficulty. I feel like no matter how much you train, there was also always like a difficult edge to it. There were battles where I died and I really had to get back in the field and train. And for me, that can be no understatement. Like, I love when games can get kind of challenging. I love when games can get kind of difficult. Now let's move on to Xenoblade 3. Xenoblade 3's gameplay got better to me with every step. Every time every couple of chapters in the game, or every like chapter in the game, they added like a new feature that was like a new important part of gameplay. I feel like Xenoblade's 2 actual gameplay was kind of understated. I feel like some people didn't try to find any depth in it, and honestly it's nowhere near the amount of complexity that Xenoblade 3's gameplay is. I'm not saying it's the most complex gaming combat system in the world. It's just simply that I feel like it's very fluid, it's fun to play, even though, to be honest, I'm not really a fan of auto attack. I can understand and actually play around auto attack. So, you know, obviously you have the auto attack canceling and stuff, and then all of that combines to be a very interesting gameplay system. And then you have your transformations, like the Ouroboros form. You have 2 different types of Ouroboros form for each pair of characters, which I thought was really interesting. You know, Noah's Infinity Blade, and all these different types of combat things you can do inside your actual gameplay. And technically, I know that combat is not the only defining factor in gameplay, but for this, the sake of this video, we're gonna focus heavily on combat, like rather than anything else. So if I had to choose which game would win based on combat and based on like gameplay, I would honestly have to choose One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows. No, I'm just joking. I hate that game. But no, in all seriousness, I would probably choose Xenoblade 3. Just simply because even though Shin Megami is a fire game, the gameplay is fire. I can go back and play hours upon hours of that game in particular, just to collect every different spirit, which is something I really kind of understated when I talked about gameplay, since I'm focusing more on combat gameplay instead of gameplay, which will probably change in the future. If I was talking about like the whole width of gameplay in terms of all the heroes that you can collect in Xenoblade 3 versus all the different spirits and stuff you can collect in SMT5, I will probably go SMT5, but a lot of those spirits that I really think are really interesting are DLC stuff, so I'm not really going to include that in this video. But to be honest, I really love the way that Xenoblade 3's combat is made. I felt like I was getting new combat. I was not getting stale of the combat at all. There were some moments where I would play SMT5 combat and I would just be playing it just for the sake of grinding for defeating a harder boss, and I felt like that was kind of annoying, you know what I'm saying? I was just trying to get past this part of the chapter, and it just felt like I was gated. Not saying the game was too hard, honestly I could just grind it and really beat the game, but just simply me doing all the extra grinding to beat the bosses just felt kind of repetitive to me. While Xenoblade, I never really felt repetitive. Like I never felt like the game was boring or the combat was boring. I always liked it. I liked the ability to kind of get the hero classes and everybody can change classes and stuff. While it does kind of like cut down a little bit on the individual, I can't even say the word. Basically, the trait that makes everybody special. It basically cuts down on that, but at the same time, it gives you a lot of different hero classes to kind of try out, a lot of different combinations of the team. It has that classic healer, tank, attack role thing going on. I really felt like that was an interesting aspect, and I really like that. I really liked all the Ouroboros forms. One thing that really impressed me a lot about those forms, and that probably gave me the edge around SMT, is that normally when you play games, right, like when you play like something like Trust Cold Steel, you're transforming, you have to build up your gauge or something like that. It has to be special qualifications for you to actually do that in combat. With Xenoblade 3, your Ouroboros transformations was probably one of the coolest transformations in video games, like in terms of just turning into it in gameplay. You don't have to build up any gauge. You don't have to build up no summon meter. There's not like a hard limit to when you can do it or how many times you can do it. You just basically get this powerful form that you can basically just get into, and then you have your balances between like cooldowns and when you can pop into it again. So for instance, say I wanted to like heal 2 characters, and the Ouroboros form with Uni is very powerful, very good at healing. The 2 characters, I can fuse them into their Ouroboros form to keep them alive long enough so I can get Uni's Ouroboros form cool down. So when they pop out of theirs, I can pop into hers and actually heal a lot of the party. Without everybody going down. There's a lot of complexity in the little details in this combat system for Xenoblade 3. So I think honestly overall it would win in terms of combat and gameplay and all the different complexities within that. But with that being said, guys, that's pretty much the end of our video. I will say one thing that I didn't really do, because I wanted to do 5 categories. Like I said, it'll be a little bit more structured from now on when I compare 2 different games. But I didn't really mention UI. I think honestly, we talk about UI, I think SMT would probably win. I do not necessarily like the UI, and I like it. Don't even, I like it, but I don't like it for this game. As it got to me playing more hours into this game, I really started to kind of hate the UI, like the really orangish look and stuff, the really orange hues and things of that nature. I really start to dislike that. So I would probably give the SMT 5 on that, but that's just like a bonus category because I really wanted to have only 5 categories in this video just so I can get a clear winner. And obviously the clear winner for me is Xenoblade 3. So with that being said, guys, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video.
やれやれだぜ。